Hi everyone, welcome again to Bake Your Way Kitchen. On today's video we're going to do a chocolate blueberry cream pie. And this is actually an amazing recipe. It's actually an adaptation from LCBO, which is kind of just a recipe book released by the Liquor Control Board of Ontario. In Ontario, all alcohol sales run through the LCBO, and this is a recipe actually from last year. And it's really, really nice. It's a good summer recipe, but you can also use it, you can adapt in so many ways, and I'm going to talk about that a bit in this video. This does have a lot of process, unfortunately, but it is worth the result. It is nice to make the day before, let it set, and then serve it immediately. There's three stages. So we've got the chocolate filling, we got the blueberry filling, and then we got the crust, which we're going to work on later. For now though, because there would be so many ingredients out that we don't all need at once, I'm just going to do this in stages just to make things a little bit easier. So to start, it's very simple. I've got 1 cup of whole milk, which is 240, 250 milliliters, some people say. 240 milliliters technically. In some places it's considered 250. 1 cup of whole milk. If you don't use whole milk, you can use a 1% or 2%, but just keep in mind it's not going to taste as rich. And I've got half a cup of heavy cream, that's 35% cream. Sometimes a little bit higher. It's usually never lower than that. So we got these two. We'll just give that mix together. This is in a saucepan, and we're going to bring this to a simmer in a sec. But I wanted to talk about the other ingredients that we've got going on here. What we have here are, we've got a 1/4 cup, 50 grams of granulated sugar, which we are going to mix with 2 large eggs. There we go. And we're just going to whisk this till creamy. I'm going to put this on the stove and let this simmer. So I just put the milk cream mixture on the stove over medium heat just until it simmers. You'll see when it starts bubbling around the edges, that's when you know it's done. Okay, and we're going to be adding it to this mixture in a bit. So make sure you're using a bowl that's heat proof. That's very important. This glass is heat proof, so it's good. So I got my 2 eggs and sugar here, and we're going to mix this until it's nice and creamy. You could use a handheld mixer if you prefer. It doesn't matter. Either can work. Let's take this out of the way. One thing I would recommend, if you have it, it's totally optional, but I find when you're mixing sugar in with eggs, it helps just with the blending for the best consistency. I find if it's possible to use a super fine sugar, use that. That would be ideal in this situation, but it doesn't matter. If you really wanted to get picky, if you had just regular sugar, you just put, in order to get super fine sugar, you just use a food processor and mix the sugar for maybe a minute or 2, and there you go. You got your super fine sugar right there. You don't need to pay extra to buy it. So this is looking fine. You just want to give it a bit of a mix. What I've got here is a 1/4 cup, about 33-34 grams of all-purpose flour. There we go. And we're just going to whisk this in. Just whisk till combined. There we go. You can see it's kind of got a bit of a lemony type color. So our mixture is done. You can see the bubbles. You just want it really to come to a simmer. And so I've got my egg mixture here. Now this is very important. So I actually was not ready for this. Okay. Put something under your glass bowl so that it doesn't move around as much. Because this is, or whatever bowl you're using for your egg mixture, because this is very important. This is a very important step. You want to use in one hand, you want to mix your egg mixture as you're pouring in your the milk cream mixture, now do it slowly, don't do it all at once, because we are trying to temper these eggs, bring them up to the temperature, because if you add all this in at once, you're going to make sweet scrambled eggs, and let me tell you, it's not a pleasant sight. Now there is a way to fix it, but it's ideal if we can avoid that situation. So just carefully, put a little bit at a time, just be patient, use an oven mitt, maybe ask someone to help you with this step, because I mean, my hands are already a little sore just holding this. This saucepan is actually really heavy. So we're just going to continue to beat this as we're adding more in, just gradually, just as I'm doing here. It's very, very simple, and as long as you're careful, as long as you keep mixing, you'll be fine. You won't make scrambled eggs. There we go. We almost have it all in. You can kind of, as you get towards the end, you can kind of add it in a bit quicker. Continue to beat on. Now, as I'm beating this, what I will say is this: if you make scrambled eggs, or if some of the eggs curdle, it's not the end of the world. All you need to do is take a sieve and pour this mixture through it, and that will get rid of that will cling onto any of the egg clumps or whatever. So just keep mixing this, just like so. Okay, we're good to go. Now we're going to put this back in our saucepan, and just give it a mix just as it's going in, just in case, because your saucepan is also very hot. So we're just going to bring this over to the stove for about 5 minutes, or until until it's thickened up and it's starting to bubble, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. So medium-high heat for 5 minutes, constantly watching, constantly stirring. I'll show you what it looks like in a sec. So as you can see, look how thick this is. See how my whisk is making tracks in our egg milk mixture here? This is done. And it's very thick. You can see this is a lot thicker in just 5 minutes, a lot thicker than how it was before when it was very runny. So now we're going to add in 85 grams, 3 ounces of dark chocolate. And also, look how quick it's going to melt. I guarantee if you chop up your chocolate, you won't need to go back to the stove with this, because it's going to melt right away. Oh my gosh, it smells amazing. You gotta understand, I know I'm hoping this transfers through to your computer screen or wherever you're watching this. Oh my goodness, this smells good. Now this goes to a point I've said many times in my other videos, your recipe's only as good as the ingredients that you use. So use a good quality chocolate. I'm gonna add in, you know what I'm adding in right now if you've seen my videos before, vanilla bean paste. You could use vanilla extract. You could leave it out if you prefer. And the amount is up to you. Usually 1 or 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract suffice. Is usually good enough, but you could add more or less. And I tell you, that vanilla complements the chocolate so well. I can smell it. So our chocolate mixture is now done. It needs to set in the fridge. But before we do that, I was just going to show you. This is a couverture bar of chocolate that I buy. You can, here where I get it, it's a little pricey. It's about $10 or $12, but it is worth it, because if you're going to make something special, you want to have good ingredients. You don't want to be having things with okay, this is essential. The first ingredients in this bittersweet chocolate, this is a 70% cocoa chocolate. The first ingredient is cocoa mass, sugar, then we got cocoa butter. Look for cocoa butter. If your chocolate does not have cocoa butter, skip it. You want to use a high quality chocolate for this recipe, otherwise don't even bother. So what I'm going to do is transfer this to a glass bowl here. I put our chocolate mixture in this clean bowl. This is actually the bowl I used for the egg mixture. I just rinsed it, cleaned it quickly. This needs to go into the fridge, but we will need to put some plastic wrap directly on the chocolate so it doesn't form a skin, but it's still too hot to put in the fridge. So you're going to unfortunately need to wait 30-40 minutes. But in the meantime, I'm going to clean up here and get ready to do our blueberry filling. Again, after 30 or 40 minutes, put a plastic wrap over and then put this in the fridge. Again, all the details of this will be available on bakeyourway.com, so look along as you're making this recipe. So I'm going to go ahead, clean up, and we'll continue the recipe. What I've got here is actually, before getting to the blueberry filling, I wanted to talk about our crust options, because the fillings that we're going to have in our pie crust, in our pie shell, is no bake. So there's no baking part added. So this is where you can get creative. You can either go out and get a regular pie crust at a grocery store or a bake shop, wherever you get it, or you can make one from scratch. I do have a regular pie crust recipe on my channel, so definitely check that out. Go to bakeyourway.com, and I'll also include a link in this video. However, this recipe traditionally, at least when I was first introduced to it, used a traditional pie crust. However, I've made this with a graham cracker crust, and I think it works just a lot better. Not just a little bit, a lot better. So that's what we're going to do here. I actually ground some graham crackers. I don't use the conventional ones at the store. I use a different brand. I don't remember the name of the brand. I use about 8 or 9 biscuits to get about 1.5 cups worth. You're going to need about 1.5 cups worth of graham crackers. So it's so easy to make a graham cracker crust. If you want to make a graham cracker crust, I'm just quickly showing you, and then we're going to get to our blueberry filling. It's so easy. You preheat your oven to 350, 180 degrees, grease a pie crust. I've got my pieces, some are a little coarser than others. I like to have a little coarser. You can add some sugar. This is a bit optional. You can either scrap out the sugar altogether if it's a very sweet graham cracker that you're using. You can leave out, you don't even need to add sugar. If you want to add, you can add anywhere from 50 to 100 grams. So anywhere from 1/4 cup to 1/2 cup would be a very sweet crust. I'm going with only 50 grams, which is 1/4 cup. But you can tailor it as you please. And I've got some salted butter here. If you don't use salted, if you're using unsalted butter at this part, I know it's really weird that I'm using salted butter. If you've seen my other videos, you know that I prefer sweet butter, also known as unsalted butter. So I've got the sugar graham cracker mix here, and I've got the melted salted butter. If you're using unsalted, add a pinch of salt here, maybe about 1/8 of a teaspoon. But this is melted on the stove and it's cooled down a little bit. You're going to need about 6 tablespoons, which is about 85 grams. And we're just going to pour it in. Now, one of the things that's funny about using a graham biscuit is that you might need to add a little more or a little less. I always leave a little bit at the end to gauge how much, how moist. You want to just simply bind the graham crackers. So if they're all very moist, then it's done its job, and you don't need to finish it. This is actually looking pretty decent. I might add just a touch more, but I might add just shy of maybe even 5 tablespoons in the end. As you approach the 4 tablespoon mark, as you're pouring it in, you can kind of gauge. You can see all these are all of these are soaked by the butter. There's no dry areas at all here. So the graham crackers have been bound together. So then we're going to pour this into our pie crust, or pour this into our pie crust. How intelligent of me. Pour this into our pie plate here, and this is gonna simply, using your hands, you can use whatever you want, but just simply press it down. It's so easy. It's so easy to make this crust. It's unbelievable. People often think, whenever you make anything, like I think the best example is when I make for anyone like peanut butter cups or chocolate almond cup. People are like, oh my god, you actually made this? You didn't buy it? And yet it's actually one of the simplest recipes I think on the channel. And so that's what's so funny. So you simply want to just make sure that there's no open spaces. Just try to, and don't worry if at the start it might look like things are kind of falling apart. we're going to be putting this in the oven for about 7-8 minutes. We want it to lightly brown a bit, but we're simply putting it in the oven to set so that when we put our mixture in and then when we cut into the pie, we're getting, the crust is staying bound together with our filling. Our pie crust is going to go in the oven for about 7 minutes, and in the meantime I'm going to get ready for our blueberry filling. Our crust is now out of the oven, and I'm going to just let that cool down. To make our blueberry filling, it's super easy. You're not even going to believe it. What I've got here is 2 cups of wild blueberries. At the time of making this video, it is summer, blueberries are in season, and they're absolutely to die for. You could use a different type of berry if you prefer. I got a 1/4 cup, 50 grams sugar, and I've got a tablespoon of lemon juice in this funny container that we got recently. Thought you guys would like it, so I brought it out. I've got also 2 tablespoons, what we're going to add in later, of all-purpose flour, which is about 16-17 grams, and equal parts of water, and I'll go into that further. But before I do, what we're going to do, give this a little bit of a mix. We're going to bring this to the stove. Oh my goodness, I'm a little bit too excited here. We're going to bring this over to the stove, and what we're going to do is with a masher, as we're heating this up to about a simmer, we're going to mash these to let out those juices. And what we're going to do when it reaches a simmer, you're going to continue to mix for about 10 minutes or so. And what we're looking for is a jam-like consistency. So as this is heating up, mash the blueberries or whatever berry you're using. And when it comes up to a simmer, like when you start to see it bubbly, reduce your heat down from medium-high heat to medium, and you're going to want to continue to watch and mix until you have a jam-like consistency. And then we're going to add in these ingredients, and I'll go into this further. So I'm going to bring this over to the stove, and I'll be right back. Just use a potato masher. You can see it releases the juices almost immediately, and you want to do this as it's heating up because it's going to be a lot easier for those juices to come out. So you're going to want to keep on doing this till you have it till you've kind of mashed up all the blueberries. And as I mentioned, when it comes up to a simmer, reduce the heat and just continue to cook and keep watch of it for 10 minutes until we have a jam-like consistency. This is what your mixture should look like when it's come up to a simmer. You can see all these blueberries have mashed. It's very quick to get up to a simmer. It smells delicious, but this is the consistency it should look like. So now we're going to continue to mix this on the stove for 10 minutes, or until it's thickened. This is what you get after about 10 minutes, and wow, you can see how much it's thickened up. One of the great things about this is that when you really cook down fruit like this, cook down the juices, it really concentrates that flavor, which is what we want. So now for our last step. So this is exactly what you should see after. Look at that beautiful color of our masher. This is the jam consistency I'm talking about, nice and thick. So now we got our flour water mixture, and we add a little bit of water to help ease the dry mixture in with, wow, I'm very clumsy with this. It's basically to really get this to mix in with our mixture. We're going to add this in. I know it looks odd. I know it doesn't look like it makes a lot of sense, but as we're going to put this back on the stove for about 1 or 2 minutes to thicken up the jam a little bit further, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So I'll be back in just a sec. You can see we've got much more of a jam consistency. You can see as I mix through this, you can see it's slowly returning back the track that's left from the spatula. So now we're going to pour this mixture into our crust, and this needs to set in the fridge. We're going to put a plastic wrap over top of this wonderful blueberry jam we've created here. Let this cool down a bit. So now I'm just going to take a piece of plastic, and you can see even when I lift up, you see it's not leaving any mark on the plastic wrap. And that's definitely a sign that it's definitely set enough for our pie crust. If it lifts up and you're not seeing anything, that's a good sign. Then you know that you've cooked it long enough and that it's going to be good to set. So this needs to go in the refrigerator for about 30 minutes to an hour. Then we can add our chocolate mixture, which is definitely ready on the top, and then we can assemble with some whipped cream on the top. So I'm going to put this in, and I'm actually going to come back next day to finish this. So I'll be back in a sec. Okay, so I'm back, and I let both of these go overnight. The chocolate obviously had a bit longer because that's what we started with. But let me show you. Wow, it smells amazing. Let me tell you. But you can tell the blueberry filling we had has set. We're good to go. And then we got our chocolate here. That's fantastic. This is the exciting part, the assembly. Now what I did here is I got a 1/4 cup of whipped cream and I whipped it up with a little pinch of salt, a little bit of vanilla, and just a teaspoon or 2 of sugar. And it doesn't need to be, it literally can be soft peaks. You want to whip it just to give it some volume. It doesn't need to be stiff. It can be soft. And we're just loosening up our chocolate mixture, and this will actually richen it up a bit, because right now it's very stiff from being in the fridge, but we are going to change that. So you just want to fold it in as best you can. It is very thick. Obviously the chocolate we're using, every chocolate, especially high quality chocolates, there's different fluidities. Some are a little more fluid than others, so for some people this will be easy. But again, even the more fluid chocolates, when you put it after it's mixed in the chocolate filling and it goes in the fridge, it's still going to set and it's still going to be a little stiff. But you can see it's loose. This is loosened up quite a bit. So we add a little bit of whipped cream at the end here, really just to not only add some richness, but also really loosen it after it has set. So this is like literally for the folding, you just simply go around like this and around, just like around and in the middle, around and in the middle. And it's okay if there's a few streaks of the whipped cream. It's not a big deal. Trust me, your guests will not be focused on that. And we're going to carefully now. Actually, you know what? I'm so excited to try this, and I'm sure you are doing this too, so don't judge me. I'm going to try this. Yes, I'm using a teaspoon. Oh my god. That is so good. And you know what? It's not very sweet. You use a 70%. The more bitter chocolate you use, it's gonna be less sweet, because we don't add too much sugar in our chocolate filling. You could do this recipe with white or dark or milk chocolate, but it's going to be a lot sweeter. And if you're making this in the summer, a lot of times people don't want to overdo it on heavy sweet desserts. This really cuts it. Using a dark chocolate, I think, is better. It goes well with the blueberries too. I find blueberries doesn't go well with milk chocolate. Sometimes it works with white chocolate, but anyway. So we're going to put this over at the top. But again, this is our Bake Your Way channel. You can do whatever you want with whatever. You can use whatever chocolate you want. You can use whatever pie crust you want. You can make the blueberry filling. You can just mash up strawberries, mash up raspberries. Like, let me tell you, it's not as restrictive as you might think. So now, just using an offset spatula, you just want to spread the chocolate mixture to cover over the blueberry mixture. Let me tell you, you have no idea how excited I am about this. There we go. Alrighty, look at this. We are finally done. Kind of. I want to give you a few options from here because I love doing that. So, there you go. You have an excellent pie. You could have this as is. Well, first of all, you need to put plastic wrap over the top of this. This needs to set in the fridge for an additional 2 hours at least, or an additional day. It's up to you. You can really make this over a period of a couple days. So after at least 2 hours, you can take this out. You can whip up some more cream, slice it, put a dollop on top, or you can cover the top with whipped cream. I'm going to end up probably covering the top with whipped cream later, but this is going to set in the fridge, and I will show you a piece. We're going to slice one and give it a try. And as I mentioned, you can leave this as is. You can dust some powdered sugar over the top. There's tons of options you can do from here. You can put blueberries on the top, put blueberries, pieces of chocolate. You can do whatever you want. It's really fantastic. That's what's so great about this. Maybe some toasted nuts as well. The options are endless. So I'm going to put this in, and I'm going to show you a piece, and we're going to try it. This has been in the fridge now for several hours, and I'm very excited because we're at the presentation phase. Now, as I mentioned, as an option, you can whip up 1 cup of whipping cream just on its own, or with a little bit of vanilla and sugar as well. You can whip it up in a handheld or a stand mixer. I'm not going to do that. You know what? I think I'm fine with it as is, but I want to garnish it. So, what I've got here is I took a brick of white chocolate and made these fancy kind of twirls with it, and you can just use a peeler, literally, and you get this result. And you just continue to go like this. And, I mean, eventually, you're going to start peeling your fingers, so you get the last bite. So that's a plus. You get the last bite of chocolate. So then just, I mean, this doesn't need to be anything fancy. I mean, you can do whatever you want. I just think this is I find with pies, you know what? You just do what you want. You don't need to go all fancy. People will, all they see is that in their stomach. So, then just add some maybe blueberries in the center. I mean, really, you can do what you want, as I mentioned. There we go. And then as soon as you've done this, I mean, you could put it back in the fridge and then serve it the next day, or you can serve it right away. And that goes for if you do a whipped topping, you can serve it immediately after. Actually, sorry, I should actually rephrase that. Sorry. You should probably chill it for maybe 10 minutes, and then you can serve it immediately after that. Sorry. Because it should take a little bit of time at least to set, but it's not a huge deal like the other layers. Okay, as you can see, it's nothing fancy, but it's going to taste good, and I got the last brick of chocolate. Delicious. So, I'm going to cut a piece, and we're going to try it. Hey, so unfortunately my camera was not recording when I did the final cut into our pie here, but I wanted to just explain to you. We've got our graham cracker crust, blueberry filling, and our chocolate on the chocolate filling on the top, and then I've garnished it with white chocolate and blueberries on the top, but you could do whipped cream. And it's a nice flavor. It's a good balance, not too sweet because we use bittersweet chocolate, and it tastes phenomenal. And let me tell you, highly recommend the graham cracker crust with this. But you could do, as I've mentioned before, you could easily do any pie crust, one from the store, if you're short on time. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please stay tuned for more. Visit bakeyourway.com for full recipe details and pics, and I'll see you in the next video.